Connery, I've been actually hired by the business people in your community to prepare that economic study, and
Okay.
I was hoping tonight to make a brief presentation of what that is.
Do we actually, we don't have the economic study? Do we? We only have an excerpt of it, I believe?
That's right.
Yes, you do.
So, we don't, right, okay. So is the entire study in there or just the excerpt?
Just an extract, a summary of the study.
Okay.
Ben didn't want to do it.
I can get you the study by,
Yeah, we only have a summary, just so you
Right.
know. We don't have a, all right. I promise to let you to talk. Do we have,
I have questions.
let's ask some questions first. And Barbara, then Alan, you had a question?
Okay, I have a couple of questions because believe me, I have a septic system, so I understand what happens when they aren't functioning properly, so I know that you guys probably need sewerage. So my first question is the betterment fee. So is the betterment fee for this project going to pay for the entire thing eventually?
the goal is the betterment fee will pay for close to the, if not the entire thing, close to the entire thing. That would be worked out during the design.
Okay,
In other
so
words-
the study, because you don't pay the betterment fee until you actually hook up, correct?
Yeah, well, no, once the sewer is constructed, a betterment fee is assessed. Liens are placed on all the properties for betterment
Okay,
purposes.
so the liens are placed on the properties when the sewer goes in, even if nobody connects to it?
That's true.
Okay. So my second question is that this lien comes onto like their sewer bill, their tax bill or something, correct?
Yes.
All right. If a business along that corridor was unable to pay for this, does the town have a system in place where they could take out a loan? Or do they need to get a loan from a bank?
No, we don't have at the present time, there's no town loan available.
Okay.
Hold on. I promise you I will let you talk. Just write these questions down. Because you keep going like you have an answer, so.
I think we also got to remember that if the sewer was constructed down this area, including Campanelli Park, there's another major area of the town streets that could then be sewered that right now we can't. Down below Cornell, going down Turnpike below Cornell, I think it's Prescott, 10th Ave, 9th Ave, all those streets can be sewered once there are sewers in Campanelli Park. So there's a tremendous benefit to the town over and above sewering this particular area, Park Street.
Okay, so so we're going to pay the upfront cost, this little piece right here,
Yes.
because they're not getting the betterment
That's
until you
correct.
go to the next step. That's fine. And then, okay,
Hold on.
so
Are you saying that we're not incurring these costs? All right. Well,
Why don't you have him come up, Holly?
could you come up and join us? Because you seem to
know what you're doing.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, have you and Ben talked?
Yes.
Because you guys, he's saying we are absorbed and you're saying we're not.
There's a nuance that I would like to present.
Okay, why don't you come to the mic? Why don't you come to the mic and state your service? Because, it's confusing because,
Are you a lawyer or an engineer?
hold on, excuse me.
Ledgebrook?
Erdem,
Just
I know, but let,
I
Wait your
am
turn.
wait.
a development consultant trained as an architect and city planner, and I have 40 years' experience in the greater Boston area. And I do fiscal impact analyses for both the public and private sector. And I was hired in this case because we also have another study going through Kleinfelder SEA that the private folks are paying for the initial feasibility study and engineering analysis of the area. So they're putting literally tens of thousands of dollars into this process up front.
Okay.
And to answer one question that you have about them not being able to pay, this is a critical fact of the report, and I think everybody should understand this. Today, when those folks down there in this traditional commercial area, they pay pumping fees instead of a sewerage fee. If you're hooked up on Technology Street or any other street where you have commercial development that pays a lot of your levy, which is about 28% of your levy in this town, those people pay $9.31 for every 1,000 gallons. The people here who are business people in your same town pay 115% of that. They would make money if there was a sewer. They would be better off by an enormous factor. And it's, to put it another way, it's like saying you're running a business in this town and you have a business on Park Street and you were the sewer commissioners. It would be like you saying you're going to increase their sewer rate of all sewered businesses by 115% in 1 year for every year. There's a real, honest-to-goodness operational disadvantage that these folks have been paying for 20 years. And to answer the one other part of the question, I think Ben is right. There's just two pieces of this. The betterment tax addresses the whole issue of the construction. The operation, they would be paying a fee like everybody else, the 931, so ongoing would be covered. The $500,000, it was something that was bedeviling me too. And in the report, after talking with your assessor, and I think you can all appreciate this, if you put a sewer in place on a piece of property without even changing the building, without even changing the value, the property goes up. Think of it this way. You have an empty piece of land that's landlocked. It's worth so much. Your assessor puts a bill on it. You put a public road by it, the land goes up. You put a water line in, the land goes up. You put electricity in, the land goes up. You put a sewer in, the land goes up. I looked at comparable values of sewered and non-sewered areas in your community. The base value of a non-sewered component of the tax bill is $3. The sewered area is $8. Not even what's on the building. Just take that off the label, off the table. So if we just put a sewer in, what happens is just the natural increment of the land value is going to pay the $500,000. I looked at it not as a 3 times increase, but 1/10 of that. And I said, well, 500,000 at 5 1/4 over 20 years, it's about $41,000 a year. If you increase the assessed value by $3 million on that land, not even near what it is in the other areas, you earn 60. So everything that gets built in the future is net to you, every single piece of it. And as Ben said, and I think this is a terrific point, just as simple long-range fiscal policy for the town, you don't want to keep going back to hit the residential ratepayer. I mean, sometimes we have to, every town.
Okay, I think you might have misunderstood why I was asking the question. The reason that I was asking is we put in a sewer in a part of town, it was residential. Those people got hit with a big bill and they couldn't afford it. So when I was asking if there was some way for our businesses to pay, I was trying to help them. And
Okay.
the $500,000 I was just trying to get a handle on is to like when we would get the money, so
Well, you know what
I'm
it is?
fine.
The whole construction of the betterment tax and the way it's constructed, there can be business payments and certain residential components cannot be made to pay until later on they can come into the process. There's a lot of ways of addressing those particular issues, but the important thing is a public sewer requires hookup when you go to use it and develop it. And those people can be paid at that time. These folks, and there's scores of businesses here, I mean, they're essentially capped. It's inadvertent what's happened over the last 20 years. You've capped them, and they are in a tremendous operational disadvantage in relation to everybody else. These are the folks who'll sign on first. How you structure who pays when they come on later, that can certainly be worked out.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
First question is the idea to hook in as an economic development area as specified by the state? I hope I have the proper terminology. One can become part of a set economic development into an adjacent area, let's say Brockton would accept you, and then there are certain tax breaks that go along with it. Any plans for anything like that?
At the present time, there is not necessarily a plan set, cast in stone. Some of the businesses have been waiting for a number of years with the thought that they could tie into Brockton.
Okay,
And
that answers my
it's,
question. So in other words, you're going to be looking for an agreement with the Board of Selectmen to do something about modifying the tax structure
No.
No.
She didn't say that.
No. No, but I mean, the construction, once sewers are constructed, the valuation of the property will be increased, therefore the tax income will increase. That's,
I'm talking about economic development areas that can be certified as economic development areas.
no, not at the present time. No, no, no.
My other question is this, is the I&I fees. The I&I fees will be collected when the connection is made?
Yes.
What's the estimated I&I fee for our commercial?
Well, we haven't worked that out yet. That's got to be worked out. That'll be part of the design. See,
It has to be paid up front when the connection is made.
when the connection's made, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Walsh, I'm going to move on, I promise. I promise. Ms. Walsh, yeah. We're going back and forth. We're having a... We have more than just our committee, you guys. Yes.
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street. I represent this area in town meeting, and obviously I live in this area. As a member of the Board of Selectmen, I couldn't sit when this article came up or discuss it, but this is a public hearing, and I'm an ordinary citizen, and I have a right to speak. I can't afford my property to be any more valuable than it already is. The last time this was proposed, the bill was going to be almost $13,000 for me and about $250,000 for my neighbor. It's hard enough. My taxes are almost a quarter of my pension now. And I know I could sell my family farm, and we really don't do much farming anymore, but it's been my home since 1948. It isn't just businesses. Drive down in my area. People live here. People who are just getting by. This idea came up at a recent ZBA meeting where some of my neighbors were present, and their heads started going. Now, is this going to go by frontage?
Well, see, that'll be worked out during the design. The actual basis for the betterment gets worked out.
That's
There's also-
scary,
but there's
because
also-
I own the most frontage in this area.
There's also a mechanism to suspend, you assess and then suspend an assessment until a property is sold. And that's going to be looked at too for the people who are facing a hardship.
I think, to answer the lady's question too, just to clarify, most betterment fees on sewer, especially particularly in a commercial area, are done on volume. But Ben's point, I think, should be well taken. There's no need to address residential property. People who are holding residential property in a non-development stage, there's no reason to leave it. If the lady decides to put, you know, a subdivision into that place.
I live in an industrial zone.
Actually, I think there's quite a bit of, well, it doesn't matter. It's the use that's involved. It's the residential uses that are involved, and there are some residential zones there. In both cases, what can happen, they can be exempted until they move to develop, until they essentially move to recoup the market value of the land with the sewer, at which point the value will be considerably higher than it is now.
Well, my understanding is the betterment is charged whether you hook up or not. Now, I have to be honest. I know that two of my neighbors can't sell their property because they have failed their Title V. But I'm not here representing just them. I'm here representing people that, the house next to me is in its 5th generation of Stoughton ownership. This could potentially close down the mobile home park. The mobile home park has 30 mobiles in it. We all know realistically that mobiles aren't really mobile. That when you go to live in a mobile home park, you basically buy a mobile that's already in place. So these folks have no place to take their mobile if that mobile home park closes down. Those folks are basically seniors. Their income is even more limited than mine. That's why they're living in a mobile home.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'll have more to say at town meeting.
Okay. Mr. Peter, and then yes, I know Peter. I know you, Peter. I know Eddie. I know Jim. I know you have questions. Peter Murphy, and we're going to move on. Raising your hand isn't going to make me call on you faster.
That was first.
I already know you're there.
At this point, I'm going to step back as Commissioner, Chairman of Municipal Operations, but as a resident of the area and member of Precinct 2, I'm going to speak on that behalf. And that area, since I've moved in 1989, has grown and grown as far as businesses, industry, residential. We had IKEA come in, was going to build up the neighborhood, do a lot of things. They did nothing for the neighborhood except build, I believe, somewhere in the vicinity of 1,000 feet of sidewalks. Turnpike Street, from Central Street all the way down to Park Street, has become a major thoroughfare. We had Bob's Furniture running trucks through the neighborhood there. We finally had to get a truck exclusion from Chapman and Peters Drive. We had trucks rolling through there. We're not in favor of that industrial park building up at all. Turnpike Street, as far as people walking down there, people cannot walk on the street. There's no sidewalks there. Any more development there, I would be against until there are sidewalks and the streets are constructed better. We had a 55 community move in. They made all sorts of promises. They took care of Nickerson and they took care of Cornell Drive. Last year, this town had to accept their pumping station. We took that over. We have to now go on to private property to take over a private pumping station. And then what they did was they came and through the night and through the darkness before the zoning board and selectmen, they got the 55 requirement lifted. And as far as I'm concerned, that has got to be the sleaziest move that a contractor or developer has ever done. But what else is surprising in this town? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Jim. Peter, you're going to be the last person to speak, so you should be happy.
That's good.
Jim, because I'm going this way.
You want to have a smoke?
You can go have a smoke. You can go do what you need to do. I'll call you. Jim, go.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Thank you.
Ben, the trunk line that runs down Park Street now, where does that end?
Oak Street.
There's a trunk that crosses Park Street. Is that the one you mean? Well, I mean, all the sewer flows north, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. But there's a main trunk line that runs right down the middle of Park Street,
and
isn't it?
Well, it crosses Park Street north of Ash Street.
Okay.
Right.
Is that sufficiently sized to take up the capacity? We're
Yes, it
talking
would.
the additional capacity here.
Yes, it would. That's about a 21-inch pipe there. There's plenty of capacity.
Is it? Okay, thank you.
Erdem?
Did I hear you correctly that you charge the betterment whether the homeowner wants to connect or not? Yes, no?
When, under normal circumstances, when the sewer is constructed, there's a betterment assessed to the property owners even before they make their connection. Once the sewer is completed, the betterment is assessed.
But so if a homeowner says, no, thank you, my septic tank is good enough, then we don't.
They don't
charge
have to connect. No.
Then you don't.
Now,
they don't,
in this case, we understand.
they still pay the betterment.
Yes, yes.
No, but hold on. Just let me just clarify so we can move on from this. There is a betterment, but there is a way to structure it, from what I understand, so the assessment can be done when someone sells their home, so it doesn't have to be later on, or it can be later on when they sell their home. It can be the problem here is that if you were going to do this, given the fact that you have residential and commercial, I would think you would need various amounts of betterments and ways to pay it. Some might be immediate, like in the terms of the developers. Some might be on when you sell it. Some might not be, and some might have to take into account the ability to pay of the current residents that are there. Right?
That's right.
So would you construct, and is this part of that, so that you take into account all of those issues?
Exactly.
That's exactly what we're assuming, because there are, as you pointed out, mixed uses and mixed conditions in the area. There's no need to have a one-size-fit-all. We don't want to do that whatsoever. We're cognizant of all the other problems. The real issue here is there's $45 million worth of assessed value right today in that area. And frankly, that's probably half of what it should be, because there's no way to develop that area or even use it to 1/5 of what you folks put on it as a zoning capacity. You could zone it for the moon, and you can't get there because you can't meet Title V. It's basically frozen. And by frozen, that means the financial value to you is frozen. So we're focusing only on the business folks. We are open to any kind of exemption or program to protect anybody else involved. But the businesses right now are paying a tremendous operational disadvantage because they have to pump in the year 2012 in a traditional commercial area that has good highway access. Frankly, doesn't make any sense for them or for yourselves, in my opinion.
So I think just to clarify, is that because of these concerns, if this was to be approved, Ben, that I think the residents are looking for some, I don't want to say promises, but some guarantees that the betterments and stuff, so that they, if you're doing it for the.
It would have to be a document that I think would meet those requirements and that your legal staff would attest to the fact that it provides protection. This is not any
actually,
attempt to do anything else.
If I may follow up, my question is, there are plenty of businesses, and businesses will benefit from this more than the homeowners. So is there a way, at least for this design part, recoup more money from the businesses than let the town pay for this $500,000?
Well, see, the betterment has to be related to the value of the land. And these businesses you're talking about, like the big box in the park, they're a lot more valuable, and their value will increase proportionally greater than a small residential house lot.
No, I'm talking about this $500,000 is for just the engineering design, not
Yes,
for
it
the
is.
implementation.
That's just for
Can
the,
we get businesses to pay part of it rather than the town paying for the whole thing?
well, the goal of the 500,000, there's no way we can assess a betterment at this point in time. The businesses are contributing money now with the study that's going on separately from this action. But the idea is that the $500,000 will be recovered in future years through increased taxes as a result of the project. That's how that $500,000 will be recovered.
Betterment. The $500,000 initially, as they told us before, would be paid for by the assessments. So if you have commercial, the commercial rate in this town is different than the residential rate. If you have more of an assessment, a higher assessment, commercial businesses pay more. Eddie, and then, could we just?
I would just say that after what we've heard tonight, with all, with the school committee earlier, and all these buildings that people either want to renovate, build, or whatever, and we're going to need a source of income to help defray those costs. And I think the other thing that I look at is Park Street is Route 27. That's a main avenue to the town. And a lot of people on that strip, whether they be businesses or homes, have had obvious problems with their septic systems. And just like down in my end of town, West Stoughton, when that was developed, basically when the sewerage came in, it led to that end of town being developed, and we know how that swelled the tax rolls. So, but just physically, Ben, is this going to start at Ash Street?
There'd be a pump station down at the low end, which is down past Nasira's, between Nasira's and the Brockton line, somewhere there'll be a pump station. That will then pump back up the hill, past Ash Street, down to the main trunk sewer.
Okay. I would just reiterate, I think that this is probably a good project. If you've got people that are willing to put some money on the table to help the town, seems like a win-win. And yes, it's going to affect some people that have property, but that property, those properties are going to, as he said, I mean, that's a fact. That's going to skyrocket the value of the properties. That's why they call these infrastructures that go by these areas as a betterment. So I think it's a win-win, and hey, we're gonna do something. We're gonna fund all these projects.
Okay, thank you, Steve, and then Peter.
Approximately, how many miles is this main trunk going to be?
Well, there's a number of lines down there. I don't have the actual mileage, but I
It's
would
just
guess
a guess. I mean, you must have some idea.
about 2 miles of
2
pipeline.
miles?
Yes.
And do you have any idea at this point how many places that may pick up as far as residentials and businesses?
Yes, there's actually a study ongoing on that right now.
50, 100,000? You know, it must be some kind of a number. How many people will be hooking in right away or could be hooking in?
This is just a guess, don't hold me to it,
That's
but
fine.
SCA Kleinfelder has also been privately financed by the businessmen in the community to look at the feasibility. They're an engineering firm that does tremendous amount of sewer and other types of infrastructure work. I would estimate that initially this thing would probably be designed for 50 to 60 type of business
Hookups, yeah.
locations. They'll give us the answer.
Ben, will the DEP get involved in this? I know when we tried to put a well in, they were telling us they didn't want water leaving the town anymore and go into different watersheds. Is this going to be a problem with DEP? Or?
No, DEP, the involvement is we'll have to get a permit from DEP to construct the pipes.
But they don't have a problem with the water leaving? Because that's what they were telling us at Cedar Swamp. We didn't want any more water leaving the 3 watersheds and going into Boston, but that's not a problem with
There's
the
no
sewer.
alternative. I mean, the
Okay.
only, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Peter?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, my pleasure.
When all's said and done, after your study and everything's done, you're going to end up coming back to town meeting for some kind of a bond to float this sewer to be paid for over the next 20 years. So you got any kind of rough idea what that's going to amount to, like $3 million, $5 million? Or
I'm guessing 4 to 5 million at this point.
4 or 5. All right. My other question was the pumping station, but it was already answered. There's going to be a pumping station. So the sewer line on Park Street right now goes from the Park Street Plaza to the Brockton line. For some reason, there was a dispute with Brockton. Said first you could tie into their sewer, then they stopped you 1 foot away from the manhole. So that means the sewer line that's on that end of Park Street is going to be rendered useless because it's pitching the opposite direction. So Burger King and whoever else is on that area of Park Street, they're going to have to put a new line to pitch a gravity feed back to your pump station.
That's true. If the owner of Arcade Plaza was led to believe a few years ago that he could tie into Brockton, so we put a pipeline to the town line, and then it was stopped, and they didn't allow him to tie in. Maybe the last couple of 100 feet of that pipe would not be used. It would have to be reversed and come back to a pump station.
Well, the whole thing would be reversed because it's pitching from the highest point, which is the plaza.
Right.
So that whole line is rendered useless. I said this before. First Brockton said you could, and then something happened between Stoughton and Brockton. They said, no, you ain't going to do it. This is just my view. I think the town should go back there and renegotiate with Brockton to flow to that existing line that's already there. Cut that price to that much of Park Street is already sewered, so you won't have to re-sewer it.
We've been in contact with Brockton a few times over the last few years, and Brockton, it's not a matter just of their objection to it. They're under an edict from the EPA that doesn't allow them to take in surrounding towns. There was some talk that that edict was going to be lifted, but so far it hasn't. And so, you know, we're monitoring this. We do discuss this with Brockton periodically. I meet with Brockton at a planning meeting once a month at the Old Colony Planning Council. And certainly if things changed, we could tie in, and would have to check the economics of going to Brockton as opposed to coming back this way.
Well, like I say, I think maybe this thing sits on a shelf and there's not really enough negotiation going on between the two Brockton and Stoughton community. But maybe if there was a little more effort put into it, maybe Brockton would eventually let you tie in. I'm not against sewers. I'm for sewers. I wish I had sewer on my street. I wish the whole town was sewer. But
Okay, thank you. Rick, you